Okay, so we're back for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And, this time we're tackling something that a lot of our listeners have been asking about, and it's, the role of acupuncture in improving pregnancy rates.
Absolutely. And it's a question that deserves some unpacking because it's not just a simple yes or no answer, right?
Right. And we've got a stack of research studies that you all have sent in, so thank you for that. And we're going to really dig into those and see what they're saying and, try to tease out what the science actually suggests about acupuncture's potential benefits across various, fertility challenges.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to be upfront about this, right? Like, we're not here to give medical advice.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah, but what we can do is look at the evidence and see what kind of trends emerge.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so where do we even start with this? I mean, there's so much research out there.
I know, right? But I think one of the things that keeps popping up is hormonal regulation.
Yeah, hormonal regulation. That's huge, right? I mean, it makes sense when you think about it because hormones are basically the conductors of the whole orchestra of fertility.
Right, and they have to be in sync for everything to work properly.
Exactly. So let's look at some specifics here. There was this really interesting study published in 2021 by Pan and colleagues, and they were looking at women with PCOS.
Polycystic ovary syndrome.
Yes, exactly, PCOS. And they found that using manual acupuncture in combination with herbal medicine actually led to improved pregnancy rates. And they specifically linked this to the regulation of key sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen.
Okay. So it's not just, feeling better or whatever. It's actually impacting those core hormones.
Right, exactly. It's suggesting that acupuncture might be helping to address a root cause of infertility in some women with PCOS. And it's not just limited to human studies either. There's this research from WHO and their team on COH rats.
COH rats. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, so COH stands for controlled ovarian hyperstimulation.
Oh, okay. So like what happens in some fertility treatments?
Exactly. They're simulating those conditions in the rats. And what they found was that acupuncture seemed to help restore hormonal balance in these rats. And it also seemed to improve something called endometrial receptivity.
So that's the uterus's ability to, accept and nourish an embryo.
Precisely. And this is super important because, you need that hormonal harmony for ovulation to happen properly and for the uterine lining to develop so that an embryo can implant and grow.
Okay. So we're seeing potential benefits on, multiple fronts here.
Yeah, and that endometrial receptivity piece, that's a big one that we see coming up again and again in the research.
Yeah, it's like setting the stage for a successful pregnancy.
Exactly. You got to have that welcoming environment. And that same study by WHO and colleagues, they found that acupuncture actually helped to restore the implantation window in those COH rats.
So the implantation window, is that optimal time for an embryo to implant?
Yeah, it's like a short period when the uterine lining is primed and ready to go, and acupuncture seemed to help get that back on track. And it even improved the thickness of the endometrium, which is the lining itself. So a thicker, healthier lining means a better chance for the embryo to attach and thrive.
And we're seeing similar things in human studies too, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are a couple of studies from 2022, one by Zhu and colleagues, and another by Zhu and their team, and they were both looking at women who were undergoing frozen-thawed embryo transfers, which is often called FET.
So that's when a previously frozen embryo is thawed and transferred to the uterus.
Exactly. And these studies showed that acupuncture seemed to be linked to increased endometrial thickness and improvements in what they call morphology, which is basically the overall quality and structure of the uterine lining.
So acupuncture is potentially helping to optimize that physical environment for implantation.
Yeah, that's what the research is suggesting. And importantly, these improvements were associated with higher clinical pregnancy rates in FET cycles.
That's really promising.
Yeah.
Especially considering how common FET is in IVF these days.
Definitely. And, we can't talk about fertility without addressing the elephant in the room, the stress.
Yes, the emotional roller coaster of infertility is no joke.
It's real, and it can have a real impact on the body. Stress hormones can wreak havoc on all sorts of systems, including the reproductive system.
So could acupuncture help with that too?
That's what some of the research is suggesting. There was a really interesting study by Gavin and colleagues from 2020, and they were looking at anxiety levels in women who are undergoing IVF.
Okay, so measuring how stressed they were.
Exactly, and they found that acupuncture significantly decreased anxiety levels both before and after the embryo transfer procedure.
Oh, wow. So even in that really high-pressure moment.
Yeah, which is amazing, right? And it makes sense when you think about the mind-body connection. If you can reduce anxiety, you're creating a more relaxed internal environment, and maybe that allows those reproductive processes to function more smoothly.
That's like taking some of the pressure off.
Exactly. And then there's also the whole aspect of blood circulation and how acupuncture might be improving that.
Right, because good blood flow is essential for pretty much everything.
It is. And for the ovaries specifically, it's crucial for healthy egg development and release. And several studies have shown that acupuncture can actually increase ovulation rates and help regulate menstrual cycles in women with PCOS.
So we're talking about studies like the PAN one we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and also research by Chen and their team from 2022.
Exactly. Those are just a couple of examples. And the thinking here is that acupuncture might be stimulating blood flow to the ovaries, which could enhance their function and boost those chances of conception.
So it's like giving those ovaries a little extra support.
Exactly. And it's fascinating because we're starting to see this picture emerge of how acupuncture might be working on all these different levels, like hormonal regulation, endometrial receptivity, stress reduction, blood circulation, and it's all interconnected.
Right, it's not just about one thing. It's about creating this whole environment that's conducive to pregnancy.
Exactly. And so let's zoom in a bit now and look at how these potential actions might translate into outcomes for specific infertility conditions.
Okay, yeah, let's get into the specifics because I know a lot of our listeners are dealing with very different challenges.
Right. So let's start with PCOS, since we've been talking about it already. That sham-controlled trial by Pan and their team, that was really impressive. They found a significantly higher pregnancy rate in the group that received manual acupuncture compared to the sham acupuncture group.
So the sham acupuncture is like the placebo group.
Exactly. And the difference in pregnancy rates was pretty striking, 46.34% in the manual acupuncture group versus only 18.42% in the sham group.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it really suggests that there's a real therapeutic effect happening there, and it's not just about using acupuncture in isolation either. The Chen study that we mentioned earlier found that combining acupuncture with metformin, which is a medication commonly used to manage insulin resistance in women with PCOS, actually further enhanced those pregnancy rates.
So it's like they work together synergistically.
Yeah, potentially, and it could be because they're both targeting different aspects of the problem. Metformin is helping with insulin sensitivity, while acupuncture might be working on hormonal balance and improving ovulation, so you're kind of hitting it from multiple angles.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about for people who are dealing with unexplained infertility, which can be so frustrating?
Yeah, I know, right? It's like you're searching for answers when there aren't any clear causes.
Yeah, and what does the research say about acupuncture in those cases?
Well, there's a retrospective study by Soksur and colleagues, and they looked at IVF patients with unexplained infertility, and they found some really encouraging results. The clinical pregnancy rate was significantly higher in the group that received acupuncture on the day of embryo transfer compared to the control group, 60.9% versus 33.3%.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It is, and they also saw a really significant difference in live birth rates, 71.7% in the acupuncture group versus 31% in the control group.
Okay, those are really impressive numbers, especially for a situation where there often aren't a lot of good options.
Exactly. And then for those who have gone through the heartbreak of recurrent implantation failure, or RIF.
Yeah, that's when an embryo repeatedly fails to implant in the uterus.
Right. And it can be devastating for couples. But there's some research suggesting that acupuncture might offer some hope here. A meta-analysis by Lai and their team looked specifically at RIF patients undergoing IVF, and they found that acupuncture significantly increased clinical pregnancy rates, biochemical pregnancy rates, and embryo implantation rates.
It's like it's hoping to overcome those barriers to implantation.
Yeah, potentially. And for women who are doing frozen thawed embryo transfers, which, as we said, is a huge part of IVF these days.
Yeah, what's the research showing there?
Well, a meta-analysis by Zhu and colleagues found that acupuncture significantly improved both clinical pregnancy rates and biochemical pregnancy rates in FEFI patients. And remember that study by Zhu and their team that we talked about earlier that showed improvements in endometrial thickness and receptivity with acupuncture.
Right, so it's all coming together.
It is. And we've been talking a lot about the physical aspects of infertility, but we can't forget the emotional toll it takes.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly stressful and emotionally draining.
Yeah, and there's some good research showing that acupuncture can actually help with that too. A meta-analysis by Huang and their team found that acupuncture significantly reduced anxiety and depression scores in women experiencing infertility.
So it's not just a physical treatment. It's addressing that mental and emotional well-being too.
Exactly. And we saw that in the Govan study as well, where they specifically noted a reduction in anxiety around the time of embryo transfer in IVF patients.
Right, because that whole process is so anxiety-provoking.
It is, and finding ways to manage that stress is so important, and it seems like acupuncture could be a really valuable tool for that.
And of course, we have to talk about safety because whenever we're talking about any kind of intervention, safety is paramount.
Absolutely. And the good news is that the research consistently shows that acupuncture is a safe practice when it's performed by qualified and experienced practitioners.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah, there was a large meta-analysis by Kwan and colleagues that looked at data from 27 studies with over 7,600 participants, and they didn't find any significant adverse events associated with acupuncture in the context of fertility treatments.
So it seems to have a good safety profile.
Yeah, it does. And it's always important to talk to your doctor about any complementary therapies you're considering.
I make sure it's right for you.
Exactly. But overall, the research is painting a pretty positive picture of acupuncture as a potential complementary approach to fertility treatment.
So to recap some of those key findings for our listeners, in women undergoing frozen sod embryo transfers, or EKT acupuncture, was linked to an improved clinical pregnancy rate and better endometrial thickness.
All right, and for those with unexplained infertility, we saw some pretty impressive increases in both clinical pregnancy rates and live birth rates.
And for individuals struggling with recurrent implantation failure, the research suggests that acupuncture might help improve those odds as well.
Yeah, those were some really encouraging results.
They were, and it's important to remember that these are findings from research studies involving groups of people. So individual experiences can vary.
Right. It's not a guarantee, but it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, and for those of you listening who are interested in exploring this further, we wanted to mention the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness in New York City.
They're a leading center for complementary fertility medicine.
Exactly, and they integrate acupuncture and other holistic approaches with conventional fertility treatments.
So if you're curious about that kind of approach, you can reach them for a consultation at 212-685-0985.
And you can also find more information on their website at www.berkeleycenter.com.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it really begs the question, how can we blend the best of both worlds? Traditional practices like acupuncture and modern medicine.
Yeah, how can we use them together to create new possibilities in the journey to parenthood?
That's a powerful thought to ponder.
Yeah. It is, and I think it's a conversation that's worth having. So thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the world of acupuncture and fertility.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep believing in the power of possibility.
Absolutely.
Take care, everyone.